The Australian industry group stepped up the pressure on the federal government today over industrial relations, saying the current laws are stifling productivity. The group's CEO, Heather Ridout, said the government's Fair Work Act should be amended and called for the return of individual contracts. Former BHP Billiton chairman Don Argus joined the calls for industrial reform, saying the government's Fair Work Act could damage the Australian economy. John Stewart reports.
The Australian industry group's chief, Heather Ridout, is usually cautious about criticising the Gillard government's workplace laws. But today she wasn't holding back, blaming the high Australian dollar and the Fair Work Act for lowering Australia's productivity growth.
We have an act that's actually, according to our members, impeding productivity and certainly not contributing to an improvement in it. And so there's a range of elements and aspects of the act we have raised that need to be dealt with.
Heather Ridout says that a survey of 250 Australian industry group companies found 69% supported a return to some form of individual workplace agreements, and 80% of companies with more than 500 employees want to see the reintroduction of some individual contracts. She says the Fair Work Act needs to change, or productivity will continue to be stifled.
And we can sit there and say this act is fine, nothing has to happen, but we'll just see more job reductions in a host of industries, not just manufacturing, but in retail, etc. Because, there are elements to this act that aren't working as well as they should.
On the other side of the country, the former chairman of BHP Billiton, Don Argus, addressed a mining conference in Perth. He also blamed collective bargaining for Australia's declining productivity growth.
Unfortunately, recent developments suggest to me that we are actually seeing a regression in labour market flexibility that could undermine the future living standards of Australians. Despite the objects of the Act stipulating that bargaining should deliver increases in productivity, my research suggests that unions are resisting management attempts to achieve efficiency-related trade-offs or productivity improvements.
But economist Sol Eslake says it's still too early to judge the impact of the Fair Work Act on Australia's productivity.
There's no hard evidence as yet that the Fair Work Act has lowered productivity growth. Australia's productivity performance has been deteriorating for most of the past 10 years, a period which includes the Howard government's work choices legislation, as well as the present government's changes to the workplace relations system.
The ACTU president says today's announcement by the employer group is opportunistic and timed to coincide with Labor's poor showing in the polls.
What really concerns me is that this may well be a drive by business groups to just drive down wages at a time when we know our members are telling us that cost of living is their number one concern for households.
Sally McManus from the Australian Services Union says that some workers earn as little as $40,000 a year and cannot afford any pay cut.
They're really feeling the squeeze. So, yes, OK, companies being affected by the rising dollar, that might be true, but the first solution shouldn't be to hit and attack those people who are already really poor and doing it tough.
The federal government will review the Fair Work Act in January. John Stewart, Late Line.